welcome to Psychosocialism, where I explain psychology for people who are interested in knowing about it. Because knowledge is power, and people should have more of it. Have you ever given someone advice that seemed obvious, only for them to say, "I can't," without any reasons given? I have, a lot. In fact, I spent most of my life doing that. You merely adopted doing that. I was born! As it happens, psychologists, the people so smart they realise smartness was actually kind of dumb, have a term for this. The Locus of Control. What? What the hell is that? It sounds like a spell, shouted at you in the street by some teenage LARPer in a bad Lord of the Rings costume who hasn't realised that a LARP is done for the day. Well, actually, I used Locus of Control. Go home, Tommy. You're done here. It's actually an interesting and valuable tool that psychologists use to assess your belief structure about your behaviour, your decisions, and the world around you. Your locus of control can affect a number of things, including how you justify your actions and how you respond to good faith advice. It's a core part of who we are, our personalities, but it's a part we don't often think about enough to notice. So in the interest of public education, let's have a look at it.
Hey, what is that? Like legit?
Put simply, a person's locus of control is how much control people think they have over the outcome of events that take place in their lives. If you try to affect something, how likely are you to think it will work? Having an internal locus of control means you mostly believe that you have a large impact on your own life. It's a can-do type of attitude, a feeling of being able to change things going on around you. Your life is in control. Having an external locus of control means you believe your life and even your actions are largely due to outside or external forces. It's a what happens happens attitude, a feeling of being a kite to the winds of fate. But obviously, this answer is dependent on the scale of the events at hand, right? I can ride my bike for a cancer charity, but I can't cure cancer, right? Yes and no. The locus of control isn't about a long chain of thoughts and rationalizations, it's an impulse. Think of it as a starting bias that colours the rest of your thoughts before you think them. Say, for example, you're a far-right person. If you look at a news article from The Guardian, you would impulsively feel that it's lefty trash and not worth your time, immediately, before you read it. Even if you read the whole thing, it's stained information now, lesser in some way. That's a presumption, that's a cognitive bias. Your locus of control works the same way. When you, a person, I assume, are confronted with an event, you immediately react with a gut feeling of I can or I can't, followed by the slower, more deductive process of thinking and rationalizing. You may change your mind, you may not, but the point is the gut feeling is there, right from the start. Let's picture a scenario. You walk in, and your parents are having a blazing row. You can't tell who started it or who's in the wrong because you weren't present when it started, and they're too heated to be making sense right now. So what would your first response be? Answer now! Seize control! Just text Gullible to 69420! Actually, don't. I already made the video. It'll change literally nothing. A person with an internal locus of control is far more likely to take action, step in, ask what all the fuss is about, or try and break them up. They are more likely to take an active approach to stop the event that's causing them distress. A person with an external locus of control is more likely to watch, slip out quietly, and let them get it over with. Why would I get involved? I can't stop them. Better to just leave it be. They are more likely to take the passive approach to avoid the distress entirely. This doesn't just apply to negative stimuli either. People are more likely to attribute to their success in this manner as well. Let's take the example of a band on stage. The gig goes well, everyone cheers. Someone runs up to the band and says, "Wow, you guys were great!" The lead singer, with an internal locus of control, is more likely to say, "I know, right, we killed out there." The drummer, with an external locus of control, is more likely to say, "Well, you guys were a great audience, man. Thanks for the energy." The same event happened, but both see it coming from different places. The locus of control, as psychologists describe it, has a few analogies in philosophy and culture as well. If you think about the concept of the will, if you think of Nike's "Just Do It" slogans, Carpe Diem or Seize the Day, even a lot of climate change campaigns use the "you can make a difference" concept as part of their calls to action. These are ideas that encourage you to think with a more internal locus of control, to take more control over your own life, be it as part of a habit or as a lifestyle decision. On the flip side, think of concepts such as determinism or God's plan. These concepts posit that our lives are controlled by outside forces, things we cannot change. Okay, you might ask, but if this locus of control is a biased impulse that I can't resist, where did it come from, huh? Was I born with it? Am I genetically inferior, cursed by the gods, literally bathed in the blood of Satan and now a slave to his will for all eternity? No. Locus of control is deeply entrenched and hard to resist, but it's not innate. It came from... well, of course, every psychologist's favourite topic.
No, you've made a mistake. I mean, I can't be a wizard.
Okay, sit down. Get comfy. Tell me about your mother. Is she single and desperately lonely? As human beings, we are shaped by the world around us, the people we look up to or spend time with, and the events that happen along the way. While the nature-nurture argument is never over, looking over the research, this seems to fall on the side of nurture. The locus of control is present from very young ages, and it typically swings a bit more internal as we develop from children into teenagers. This makes sense on the face of it. I'm bigger now, I can do more things, I can climb bigger trees, reach higher shelves, I have more power. This is how we empower ourselves into adolescence. If the teenager is healthy and has a stable family dynamic, then the locus of control is likely to stay more or less internal for most of their lives. Having a strong, yet realistic, internal locus of control is related to better outcomes later in life, higher self-esteem, lower rates of obesity, and improved health behaviours overall. It seems to make sense, right? Having a strong sense of agency and believing in your ability to affect change makes you more adaptable, and more able to alter your behaviours while they're serving you poorly, right? If you think of The Secret, it bases a lot of itself on this. You might be thinking, if it makes that much sense to have an internal locus of control, why does the alternative even exist? Because the world isn't perfect, kids. Especially not to, well, kids. What happens if instead of the surrounding environment teaching young people to take control of their decisions and exercise that control over their own life, what if it teaches them something different? That they have no power, can affect no change, and what happens is simply the way things are. What if whenever they try and take control, it fails? Suddenly makes sense why all those feudal peasants took religion so seriously, right? Studies have shown that children who are maltreated, abused, neglected, or have poor attachments in early life are far more likely to develop an external locus of control. This shows that locus of control isn't innate or unchangeable. It's a learned response to a shitty situation that you feel like you can't escape. Abusers and controlling people in general promote a mindset in their targets that nothing they will do will change the outcome. In children, this can become generalized and carry on into adult life. It manifests as pessimism, feeling helpless, and therefore inaction in the face of bad things that are happening to you. This effect, if severe enough, has been called learned helplessness by researchers, and its effects on life and well-being are linked to things like depression, elevated stress levels, and a lack of motivation to take care of yourself. How this manifests in practice, and the factors that affect your locus of control in specific situations, are so vastly varied and probably a topic for another video. Some very stupid people would point to the effect of an external locus of control and scream weakness or laziness, but that belies an intellectual lack of interest in other people and a fervent desire to do absolutely nothing to help. Having an external locus of control isn't weakness or laziness, it's a learned and difficult to overcome bias that could have happened to literally any one of us. And it's important to note, despite all the benefits an internal locus of control gives you, it's not just a one-way street. Interestingly, recent studies have found external locuses of control actually reduce workplace stress caused by bullying in adult life. Internal control allows us to feel empowered, but it can also lead to blaming ourselves for things that are not our fault and are actually outside of our control. Having an external locus of control is not just a learned bias, it's also a learned defense mechanism. So now that we know where it comes from, that it's not something innate or it's a learned assumption, can we unassume that? What can we do to change our locus of control, to make it internal, but keep it realistic? There is no clear answer to that, and it would be irresponsible to give advice to anybody I don't personally know. I don't know anything about you, I'm just a guy with a degree, a bit of experience, and a cheap microphone. Here's what I do know. Self-reflection is always the first step to making change, so if you feel able, look back at the events of your life. Did you ever assume offhand that you couldn't do something? Have you ever assumed that you couldn't change an outcome, but when you tried, you go, well, that was easy. Alcoholics Anonymous posits that in order to recover from addiction, you must take a fearless moral inventory, admit your failings, and address why you made those decisions in an honest way. Likewise, to combat a bias, the most important thing you can do is acknowledge that it exists. What you do when you see it happening is ultimately up to you. The human mind is a complicated piece of software. Sometimes it goes wrong for reasons you can't even begin to explain. But the more you know about software, the closer you get to making the program work for you. Thank you for listening. Leave a like if you want to like, leave a dislike if you want to dislike, and leave me a comment. Let me know how it did, if I missed anything. I'm going to leave all my sources in the description box below. If there are any areas of psychology or concepts that you want me to discuss in the future, let me know. Shoot me a comment, and have a good one.
He's got a silver spoon from a golden handshake. The contract's almost signed, and the signature's been